Sources telling Fox News that FBI Director Dan Bongino is thinking of resigning from the agency after taking issue with Attorney General Pam Bondi over the handling of those files.
On the heels of a heated argument between FBI Deputy Director Dan Bonino and Attorney General Pam Bondi that occurred on Wednesday at the White House over the Justice Department's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files, President Trump is proud of Attorney General Bondi's efforts to execute his Make America Safe Again agenda, restore the integrity of the Department of Justice, and bring justice to victims of crime.
What happens when a MAGA insider gets too greedy, even for Trump? Dan Bonino's secret plot to protect himself while throwing others under the bus is one of the wildest betrayals you'll ever see, and his clash with Attorney General Pam Bondi over the Epstein files? It's pure chaos. Let's pull back the curtain on the scandal MAGA doesn't want you to know about. Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. What if one of MAGA's biggest champions isn't the devoted Trump loyalist he claims to be, but a master manipulator looking out for number one? Meet Dan Bonino, the guy sitting at the chessboard while everyone around him thinks they're playing checkers. On the surface, he's the perfect MAGA soldier, podcaster, former Secret Service agent, and a man who knows how to whip an audience into a frenzy with his unapologetic ride or die attitude for Trump. But beneath that carefully cultivated image of loyalty is a man so desperate to protect his own slice of the MAGA pie, he's willing to sacrifice anyone who gets in his way. Here's the thing about Bonino, his authenticity is his selling point. MAGA supporters see him as one of the few people brave enough to tell it like it is in a world of so-called fake news. He's built an empire on this persona, raking in millions of loyal listeners who lap up his every word.
People ask me all the time, are these cases closed? And whether they're closed administratively is irrelevant. If new tips come in, we're absolutely going to follow them. And that's why I always put out, if you have additional information, please let us know. Those two cases obviously are of significant public interest. We are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. You're going to see there's no one there but him. There is nothing in the file at this point on the Epstein case, and there's going to be a disclosure on this coming shortly. We are working through there is video. That is something the public does not know. There's no tips. There is nothing. If you have it, I'm happy to see it. There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out.
But as loudly as he screams about draining the swamp, he's been working behind the scenes to keep his own reputation above water, like a lifeguard saving himself while drowning everyone else. The Epstein files? Yeah, Bonino wasn't interested in exposing the truth for the sake of justice. Instead, he saw those sordid documents as his golden ticket out of trouble. With Trump's MAGA world growing more chaotic and infighting reaching peak levels, Bonino predicted the inevitable, the moment someone would try to pin the movement's failures on people like him, so he made his move. Picture a game of musical chairs where he's shoving his allies out of the circle just to cling to his seat. And sure enough, when Attorney General Pam Bondi crossed paths with him, Bonino flipped the script faster than Trump flips burgers at Mar-a-Lago. Although, let's face it, Donnie probably eats them faster than he flips them. This brings us to one of the juiciest chapters of MAGA dysfunction, the Bonino-Bondi showdown. On paper, both Bondi and Bonino share common goals. They're both pro-Trump, anti-left, and masters of turning political scandals into rallying cries for their base. But behind closed doors, it's a different story altogether. When Bondi started investigating angles that brushed too close to Bonino's financial dealings and the Epstein files, all bets were off.
It's become Cash and I our number one job. The FBI portfolio responsibility, Sean, hasn't changed. The counter-terror mission, in other words, we can't have New York, D.C., or L.A. go boom. Obviously, we wake up every day. We have our FBI teams out there at 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. They can tell you, and they're happy to do it, out there working with HSI, ERO, and removing these people from the country while still, from our information center, that indicates he threw an incendiary device, okay, while screaming very specific words with multiple witnesses and video.
Rather than letting those documents spill dirt on powerful people outside the movement, Bonino weaponized them to create a diversion, and by doing so, took aim at Bondi herself. Let's not forget, Bondi isn't a figure who backs down easily. Her stint as Florida's Attorney General solidified her as a conservative powerhouse, and she's someone who knows how to play the media game just as well as Bonino does. But when Bonino orchestrated a behind-the-scenes campaign to discredit her using the Epstein file drama, we saw something fascinating. MAGA insiders weren't just fighting their usual enemies, the left or mainstream media, they were eating their own. It's the ultimate case of friendly fire. Well, if friendly fire came with angry Twitter meltdowns and podcast rants anyway, all of this raises an obvious question. Why take the risk? Bonino's actions weren't subtle. Anyone paying attention could see the cracks forming in the MAGA armor. Did he really think no one would notice his little chess maneuver? Or was this a sign that MAGA's structure is so weak, even its inner circle doesn't trust one another anymore? Here's the answer. Bonino didn't care about the long-term survival of the MAGA movement. What he cared about was his own empire, his bank account, his podcast downloads. He calculated that if sacrificing someone like Bondi would secure his fence-sitting position, so be it. It's loyalty, all right, but only to himself. This betrayal is more than just personal drama. It's a snapshot of the bigger cracks forming in Trump's world of loyalists. If Bonino, one of the most trusted MAGA voices, is willing to play dirty against his own team, what does that say about Trump's movement as a whole? Stick around, because these fractured alliances don't just expose Bonino's self-serving motives. They shine a light on Trump's own hypocrisy and how he's encouraged this kind of infighting for years. Why do the Epstein files continue to hover over MAGA's inner circle like a bad smell? And more importantly, what skeletons are being carefully shoved into closets while outsiders are distracted by another Trump tantrum? Well, let's peel back this particularly messy MAGA chapter. Spoiler alert, it's less about justice and more about survival, ego, and some well-timed backstabbing.
Bongino's next move is unclear. Sources tell Fox News Digital Bondi and Kash Patel, the FBI director, both have no intention of stepping down, guys.
Whole lot about what he was up to with the Lolita Express and his island in the Caribbean, and managed to get a sweetheart deal. Powerful people in powerful places.
I worked closely with the FBI director and deputy director on the joint FBI and DOJ memo regarding the Epstein files. All of us signed off.
First, for those who don't have the Epstein files on speed dial, and honestly, do you even want to? These are the documents linked to Jeffrey Epstein, the late convicted sex offender whose name still sends shivers through high society. The files have become a Pandora's box, bursting with tales of elite abuse and powerful cover-ups. And for MAGA, they're both a weapon and a liability. Trump's camp has spent years pointing to Epstein's connections with the Clintons, using the files as a golden ticket to taunt Democrats. But what they don't want people to notice is Trump's own proximity to this whole train wreck. The files don't just represent external corruption, they've been exposing cracks near Trump's own orbit. This is where things get awkward. Now enter the head-scratching interview between Assistant Attorney General Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's partner in crime. On paper, interviews like this should be about uncovering the truth. In reality, it played out more like an episode of the elite legal inner circle. Blanche didn't just waltz into this one-on-one out of the blue. No, his connection to Maxwell's attorney, David Marcus, made the whole situation feel less like a grilling and more like a hand-delivered spa day. Take Dan Bonino and Pam Bondi's spectacular fallout, for example. Remember how Bonino grandstanded as Mr. Upholder of Truth? Turns out he wasn't shining a light for justice. He was flipping the circuit breaker in Bondi's direction. If Blanche and Marcus made the Epstein files look protected by a velvet rope, Bondi and Bonino were fighting like cats over which one could convince MAGA supporters they were listening to the people. Bondi's history as Florida's Attorney General didn't make her any less of a target, especially when her investigations wandered toward corners Bonino wanted kept shadowy. So what did Bonino do? He came out swinging, not directly at Epstein's powerful connections, but at Bondi herself. Because in MAGA land, who cares about aligning against the opposition when shredding your teammates is easier? The Epstein saga has morphed into less of a legal question and more of a political circus, thanks to people like Bonino. He used the files as a shiny object, not just to attack Bondi, but to paint himself as the fearless MAGA warrior, fending off both the swamp and internal dissent. It's performative politics at its most predictable. For MAGA diehards blindly cheering him on, the strategy worked. But if you scratch the surface, it's not about protecting the forgotten American or draining the swamp. It's a clumsy dance to keep Bonino's media empire intact. The man isn't building bridges, he's torching them while broadcasting the fire on a podcast. The biggest biggest threat to MAGA isn't the media, the left, or any deep state. It's the grifters clawing at each other from within. People like Dan Bonino who hide selfish agendas under a thick coat of shouting about patriotism. This isn't a movement fighting for change, it's a stage where performers leap over each other for applause. If the cracks are this obvious, what does that mean for its future? Will supporters ever stop falling for these scams? Or will they keep cheering for a team that's only loyal to itself? The puppet masters stay winning at everyone else's expense.